Good evening, and welcome to Armageddon Live, Series 2, Episode 41, Structure of Revelation 1 through 16, Part 1, on this 25th of June, 2020. I'm your host, Daniel Decrypted. It's been a little while since I have been, almost 2 weeks. Yeah, so I'm not dead, I'm back, and it's just been taking a long time to do things. And I always feel that I'm not quite done, and so I push it off another day, and now it's turned out to be 2 weeks. I haven't done anything. I'm supposed to be doing something every night. Anyway, I am here, so I guess let's go look at something. So let's get me out of the way. Move the background. Alright. Let's see. So here's the current stuff I'm working on. It's not a lot of pictures, but there was something else I was working on. I just can't remember. I have to look at the last video and see exactly where I was last time. Anyway, we'll just do something quick. I've done this already. It's just I'm redoing things, but gotta get back into things, gotta get going again. Alright, so here we are. So if you've went through things with me before, you remember this probably. In Revelation, there are 4 sevens. 7 letters to the 7 churches. Chapters 2 and 3. 7 seals. Verses 6:1 to 8:1. 7 trumpets. Verses 8:7 through 11:19. 7 plagues. Finally, 7 plagues. Verses 16:2 through 21. Alright. So here, of course, is our 7 letters to the 7 churches. Unto the angel of the church of 1, Ephesus, right? That's verse 2:1. And unto the angel of the church in 2, Smyrna, right? Verse 2:8. And to the angel of the church in 3, Pergamos, right? Verse 2:12. And unto the angel of the church in 4, Thyatira, right? Verse 2:18. And unto the angel of the church in 5, Sardis, right? Verse 3:1. And to the angel of the church in 6, Philadelphia, right? Verse 3:7. And unto the angel of the church of 7, the Laodiceans, right? Verse 3:14. Alright, so there's your 7 letters. Then we have the 7 seals. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, verse 6:1. And when he had opened the second seal, verse 6:3. And when he had opened the third seal, verse 6:5. And when he had opened the fourth seal, verse 6:7. And when he had opened the fifth seal, verse 6:9. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, verse 6:12. And when he had opened the seventh seal, verse 8:1. And then we have the 7 trumpets. The first angel sounded, verse 8:7. And the second angel sounded, verse 8:8. And the third angel sounded, verse 8:10. And the fourth angel sounded, verse 8:12. And the fifth angel sounded, verse 9:1. And the sixth angel sounded, verse 9:13. And the seventh angel sounded, verse 11:15. And finally we have the 7 plagues to Babylon. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, verse 16:2. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, verse 16:3. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers, and verse 16:4. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, verse 16:8. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, verse 16:10. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, verse 16:12. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, verse 16:17. All right, so we definitely have 4 different sevens, groups of 7, but there's more. So, of our 4 sevens, you may or may not have noticed that the 7 letters are all clustered together in chapters 2 and 3. And the 7 plagues are clustered together in chapter 16. But the seals and trumpets are split. You have the first 6 seals in chapter 6, and then you have the 7th seal in verse 8:1. Then you have the first 6 trumpets in chapters 8 and 9. That's verses 8:7 through 9:21. But then you have the 7th trumpet in chapter 11, verses 11:14 through 19. And in case you need a little reminder of that, here we are. So you notice the 6th seal is in 6:12, verse 6:12, and the 7th seal is in verse 8:1. Likewise, you have the 7 trumpets, and the 6th angel sounded in verse 9:13, but the 7th angel sounds in verse 11:15. All right, but there's more. And here we go, of course. So you have the 3, that is the Trinity, in verses 1, 4 through 6. But then you have the 3 angels' messages in verses 14, 6 through 13. Then you have the second coming in verse 1:7, and the second coming in verses 14 through 20. And finally, well, then you have the 7 letters again. But the new thing, and then if you have the 3, that is the Trinity once again, that appears in chapters 4 and 5. But then you have the false 3 in chapters 12 and 13. All right, so if we look, then we see these. So D3, the Trinity. John, to the 7 churches which are in Asia, grace be unto you and peace from 1, him which is, and which was, and which is to come, and from 2, the 7 spirits which are before his throne, and from 3, Jesus Christ. Verses 1, 4, and 5. Then we have the 3, the Trinity again. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Verses 4, 2, and 5. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and of the elders stood 3, a lamb. Verse 5, 6. Then we have the false 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, 1, a great red dragon. Verse 12:3. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw 2, a beast rise up out of the sea. Verse 13:1. And I beheld 3, another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. Verse 13:11. And finally we have the 3 angels' messages. And I saw another angel fly, saying, verses 14, 6, and 7. And there followed 2, another angel, saying, verse 14, 8. And the 3rd angel followed them, saying, verse 14, 9. Alright, finally we have the second coming. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, Amen. And that's verse 1:7. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Verses 14 through 20. Alright, so we've seen all those parallels, and here, of course, is the final structure. As you can see, it's a little more complex than the last thing I showed you, but that's because I just showed you the things that are very obvious, the very obvious structure. And it's from that very obvious structure that you can now see this more detailed structure by just splitting up or cutting up the prophecy of Revelation where there's natural breaks or natural changes in the subject. Now we're going to actually look at the here so you can see some of the verse. It says Jesus Christ and John. That's verses 1 through 3. Then you have the Trinity, verses 1, 4 through 6. And then you have the second coming, verse 1, 7. And then you have Jesus Christ, verses 1, 9 through 20. Really, I should be telling you the parallels for each of these things. So Jesus Christ and John, verses 1 through 3, parallels the Lamb and the 144,000, verses 14, 1 through 5. As we've already seen, the Trinity, verses 1, 4 through 6, parallel the 3 angels, verses 14, 6 through 13. The second coming, of course, verse 1, 7, parallels the second coming, verses 14 through 20. Jesus Christ, verses 1, 9 through 20, parallels the 7 angels, verses 15, 1 through 16, 1. The 7 letters to the churches, chapters 2 and 3, parallel the 7 plagues to Babylon, verses 16, 2 through 21. And the 3, chapters 4 and 5, parallel the false 3, chapters 12 and 13. And then we have the first 6 seals, chapter 6, paralleling the first 6 trumpets, verses 8, 7 through 9, 21. And we have the 144,000, verses 7, 1 through 8, paralleling in the angel with the little book, verses 10, 1 through 11, 2. Then we have the great multitude, verses 7, 9 through 17, paralleling the 2 witnesses, verses 11, 3 through 13. The 7th seal, verse 8, 1, paralleling the 7th trumpet, verses 11, 14 through 19. Alright, so that's the entire structure. And, well, tonight we are done. We are done for tonight, and tomorrow we're gonna go in to start to explain things a little better. So, yeah. I mean, that's all I can say for now. It's tomorrow we're gonna explain things, or explain why this structure is there. The sort of unknown parallels, or the parallels that aren't obvious. So, good night, God bless, and I'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully.